Hello, everybody. Today is Monday, October the 16th, and you're listening to the Daily AI Show live on all channels that matter. You got your faithful co-hosts, Jimmy, Beth, Robert, Andy, Carl, and Aaron, and we're going to dive into today's topic, which is bad AI. Naughty AI. You're so bad. Bad AI. So, how to spot them and how to avoid them. Well, let's start with the basic obvious premise is what is bad AI? That's like, is it like the eye of the beholder kind of thing? Are we like bad AI is from one perspective is not the same from another? Is that how we're going to do it? We're going to define it in real terms. Who wants to take a crack at that?
So just a quick clarification, it's bad AI use cases.
Oh.
So
So
that may be eye of beholder. Yeah.
I'll give you five bad AI use cases. 1, deep fake. 2, autonomous weapon systems. 3, bias and discrimination built into AI deliberately. AI enhanced cyber attacks, and finally surveillance and privacy violations. That's all thanks to ChatGPT-4.
So it's telling you what you shouldn't be using it for. Oh, how
That's
funny!
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I trust the source.
Much more important than that.
But quite frankly, though, a lot of those could be eye of the beholder. You know, if we're in the middle of a war and we're trying to fight off, I don't know, the robots, maybe using autonomous drones might be the way to go. I don't know.
So sticking
if
with
we're in a
war
war
theme,
against the robots, I'm not sure you trust the drones. Like, why are you trusting the drones, Robert?
Because they're programmed. Because we program them properly.
Things.
The fully sentient robots, we're fighting against them, but we have robots that have not been made sentient.
Have you not watched Battlestar Galactica?
Yes, I love that series. Awesome. That was a board game too.
Back to business use cases and which
Yeah.
ones are bad.
Okay, so Andy, you were trying to make a point. What was your?
I was going to just expand upon autonomous weapons, because it's not just individual AI driven autonomous weapons that could get out of hand and make bad decisions about who to kill, but there are much larger scale AIs that have already been developed. Palantir, for example, offers militaries the overall AI driven military campaign. And I assume that's what they're offering, but that's just an expansion of the idea of cyber warfare, which is a really bad thing once in the hands of AI enabled systems. So it's not as simple as just a drone that might go off. It's coordination of a whole bunch of different simultaneous attacks, by a very, very high speed AI.
Well, the thing is, you say that, I agree that those are all scary use cases. I'm worried that there's many bad players already trying to make that happen, like especially in the cyber attack world. That really scares me that let's say they want to take out our power grid or our water systems or things that are all, run by computers. That could be very scary. But let's not get into that. But I guess who else has got an opinion about use cases? What kind of use cases that were not mentioned that you think are not worth talking about?
I'm thinking, so a lot we've come a long way in terms of image generation. So one use case, which to me kicks off a whole set of dilemmas and ethical considerations, is there was a man in Quebec that was charged for creating child pornography using image generation tools. So the question is he hurting? Who is he hurting?
Oh, he's hurting a lot of people, because generating the content is just as bad as viewing the content. And yeah,
I wouldn't disagree with that statement at all. But from a legal sense, any defense lawyer would argue, well, this person did not really hurt X people. And you could be twisted enough and say, well, in reality, he's actually could be saving people because instead of acting on said urges, he just creates said urges.
But he's
That
also
might-
perpetuating said urges. He's also feeding
Yeah.
said urges. He's also fueling said urges. So
That
all of
might
that,
work
that's
if-
why it's illegal to be in possession of things like that. Yeah.
I don't think the rules, though. Now, obviously, got arrested and so on. But I think like that is one case where I think the rules of society, our rules of the land, have not caught up yet. Because that's just one use case. I'm sure there's
Right.
a lot of different use cases where the law is like, there's no law for that. So how are we?
Right.
You can't apply the current law to that to certain situations. So it's and maybe let's take child pornography off, and maybe what about creating something that led to destruction or death? So does that mean, because I think in our laws, like whoever created, whoever, like, you know, it's like the cause. It's been a while since like my legal classes, but like so who is responsible if you prompted, was it you who prompted led to, you know, a negative outcome? Does that mean?
So the way you're tiptoeing around is the same type of, whenever we decide how copyright is going to be done, is exactly the same methodology that courts will use to answer your question you're kind of posing. Because if you can own a copyright because you were the one that generated the prompt, that created the model, created the output that the model generated, if we can get to that point, then yeah, I think you can be liable for other things you did that were criminal in nature or seen as criminal or hurtful. So I don't know, we're not there yet. As you know, there's not laws to address that, but I think that's where I would want to go with this. This is where England has actually kind of already gone, is if you were the one that created the prompt, then they're wanting to go that you have the ability to claim that copyright of that output. I don't think it's actually formally been said yet, but that's the direction they were going months ago.
Yeah.
So if
So
we come
I
back
want to sort of move on a little bit from what Carl said, but same kind of thing, and talk more about deep fake like video. I mean, the guy who does that for a living nowadays. But I can see where that will be potentially a really bad thing for people. So you could, you know, it doesn't matter who it is. You could have people. I mean, as an Australian looking at America, the political system there seems pretty horrifying to me. But it could get 10 or 100 times worse once the average person gets their hands on the ability to deep fake their politicians or even just normal people. You could have all sorts of horrible stuff happening.
Well,
Whether it's an employee who sends a deep fake porn video to someone's boss or to someone's parents, or a politician who has something put out that he or she never said or did, or any of that kind of stuff. I think that's pretty bad, and I don't know how we're going to deal with that when it happens, because there will be people, if it hasn't already happened, who are trying to make stuff that you can't identify. You know, it's one thing for
that
them
already
to put something
happened.
out and put some kind of some kind of ID thing in it that you can say, okay, well, that video came from HeyGen, but there'll be somebody out there who's already got something that you won't know that it's not real.
So I think the two pieces that that sort of join in the middle of what we've talked about are it's a problem when AI, when you have something that is autonomous, unsupervised, that has significant consequences, right? So like autonomous weapon systems that don't have a human in the loop. There is human error, but right now we're thinking that a human in the loop who can say, this is a problem, something is malfunctioning here. That's an important piece. The other piece is the human on the other side, So are we susceptible to deep fakes? And the answer is yes. So I think the use case here is educating your business, educating the people that you do business with, educating your employees, educating your family, your community about what's possible. And it isn't so much about how to detect a fake, right? Like that's the wrong thing. We're still looking for the software to give us the answer so we don't have to think.
Yeah.
What we really want to do is think critically about what I'm seeing, right? So what is that? What is the angle that this is being shot from? Who benefits if this is true? Where can I find corroborating evidence?
But the
Right?
problem, I think, is it's less than that, because those are all true statements. But the problem is, once it's in the ether, once you've seen it, like that picture I just threw up there of Hitler shaking hands with Trump, obviously could not happen, right? But for some reason now it's in my brain, and or all this stuff is fake of these protest, all these things that they were generating with Trump, with protesters and fights and stuff that was many months ago. Once you've seen it, now it's kind of like it's subconsciously. So even though it's not real, subconsciously you could start generating negative publicity from lots of deep fakes. So that's my thinking on it, is we already know what's fake, but eventually it'll get harder and harder to detect. Maybe it's not politicians, maybe it's your coworker, maybe it's audio. Now, as you know,
I think it'll become more of an issue is when you start having co-workers or family members doing stuff to other people. Politicians is one thing, but if your brother or your sister gets really aggro with you about something and creates something and posts it, I mean, some of those things are going to be really difficult to avoid the impact of it, even though it never happened.
And you can't pull it back. Once people think it's real and they go, oh no, then they say it was fake, but it's damage is done. You can't pull it back, because then one person didn't hear the news article that found out that it was actually fake, and then that person still thinks it's real.
Unless it's reverse, where we all assume everything's fake now. Like, so there could be
just on the other side. Yeah.
Right. It's like,
audio is already like, I know that courts have a hard time accepting audio as evidence, because it's so right now. I wouldn't trust a bit of audio. You could just type it in and, hey, Jane, can just 11 Labs, everybody could do it.
So note to all people watching and hearing us, we are actually speaking. This is really us talking about how you should never believe anything that you see or hear ever again.
Right.
Like
that's why we're live.
Yeah.
I can use my hand.
Are we really live? Are we really live?
Well, to speak on that subject a little bit, Beth, and you're right. I agree with you. We do need to develop our critical thinking on that. And Carl, I think that's probably the direction we're going to be going to, is that's going to be our default setting, just like how I can spot a spam email like that in my email thread. But there are steps being taken, right? Adobe just announced or people are starting to talk about the coalition that they put together, or they're part of, to basically watermark images generated, so you can follow the history to help identify what that authenticity is for the images. And there's other groups like the Universal Google thing, where their intention is to help collate or monitor those fake songs as well, or fake music. Or AI creating music, I should say. That's probably more accurate. But we're definitely going in a direction where the software and the solutions are getting to that point that'll help inform us. Is it something that we should rely on as like a crutch? No, we should definitely rely on our own critical thinking. But it's good to know that they exist, and that's a direction going to because it's just another tool to help us make our own decisions.
The puck is constantly being pushed, though. I mean, so the detector is only as good as, and it's always going to be trying to catch up to AI.
Well, it's true. It's true, and it's a constant struggle. This is not we're going to find this is the ultimate solution and it'll fix it all. No, anything with technology, it's always trying to one up the next thing, right? That's how
make sure you
tech
convince
works.
politicians of that too, because they seem to think that they can easily create a law or a policy or whatever to basically, because that's the bigger problem. These
You only
Right,
have to
right.
watch
And
an interviewing Mark Zuckerberg saying, "How do you use Facebook make money?" We sell ads, Senator. That's still classic 5 or 10 years later. So,
Yeah.
and my concern with the critical thinking thing is we went through COVID and a percentage of the world lost their mind. Their critical thinking went out the ether and disappeared off to Uranus. So I don't really have a lot of hope that we're going to improve that facility in the world, if you know what I mean, unless something
Right. I'm going to resound with that whenever the word critical thinking comes up, I go, how do you get a mass population to be possessed of critical thinking? In the world of disinformation and deep fakes, it's virtually impossible. And we've been a witness to that to a large degree in the evolution of our political discourse.
Yeah,
well,
people are
Andy,
smart.
I think it really comes down to that might require a generational change.
Yeah,
you're
And
right.
I need to point out right now that I think Carl and Junmi are our youngest people on this panel. We've talked about children growing up in a world where AI has always existed. So their expectation that something on video is true or something that they hear is true will not be the same as ours, right? And fortunately, unfortunately, the people represented on this panel are the people who are have the most power in the world. So if our critical thinking is impaired, and holy crap, it is, then we have an outsized power to affect something because of where we're not questioning or we're not quite prepared to like make all of the connections of what's possible now and how do I know that that's true, even though it's somebody that I trust, right? But that's a us thing. That's like we need to be talking to our people about what's possible now and what, like, how do you answer questions when you don't know right away,
And
when
this
you
is
think
where
you know?
I think it's so disappointing. You see either secondary, higher education not having concrete plans for AI, either sticking their head in the sand or banning it, or just individuals trying to teach, but then some, because that's what I mean, like the critical thinking aspect of everything because of AI is so important, yet it's not happening in the one where the crucial places to teach critical thinking are. And so
I think as far as the education side of things go, Carl, I think that will change in time. We're so new for most of this that I just don't think a lot of people have even come to grips with what the hell it is. So, we've talked on a previous show about the education industry and, using AI to train students and that kind of stuff. I think we will make progress in that space. It just may take a bit longer. You got to remember, we're all quote unquote advanced users of this stuff. So our viewpoint, I think, is more advanced than the average member of the public who just maybe doesn't deal with this kind of thing on a regular basis.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to shift the conversation to a sort of a grifter level of application of bad AI, which is identity theft.
And use cases.
Yeah. So identity theft has been in the press before, new telephone scams to elderly where, they just figure out, okay, here's a video online that I can take of the son of this person. And then I clone the voice and in real time, they're speaking to the person. So it feels like a live conversation, but voice manipulation is changing them to be perceptibly someone that they trust. That's going to be used in sort of petty theft and or grand theft on a wide scale by the criminal element.
Right. And I think these are good examples of illegal use cases. I'd like to shift it, and if I could, if y'all want to piggyback on Andy, then go ahead. But I'd like to shift to just improper business use cases, like what things you shouldn't do with it. Like, for example, math. Like, I'm not going to ask it for 2 + 2 because it's not likely going to be right if I use GPT. So what other bad AI use cases do you see in business that you just shouldn't be using it for? Like, I mean, we use it for ideation. It's a brilliant at that. We try to use it for emotional intelligence and a companionship, which is Character AI and Pi.ai. So those are things that people are using for. But those are kind of the lion's share. But what shouldn't we be using it for that are bad AI use cases?
Productivity and activity monitoring in the workspace.
Say that one more time. Productivity and what?
Activity monitoring and productivity evaluation in the workplace.
Well, wow. Okay, so we have a big tool right now at WSI that we're using that does exactly that. We analyze salespeople, and we determine based on our framework of what we've determined and their call logs, transcripts, if they're hitting all the buttons. So why do you think that's a bad use case?
I think it changes the motivational structure of a workspace and makes it kind of an oppressive environment. That's a personal opinion. I kind of come from the standpoint of somebody who is highly motivated himself. So I don't feel like I need to be surveilled and have metric application of AI to my performance. But I can see where it would be applicable, and you're probably using it at WSI in a way that assists management and also the employees in understanding how they compare to others.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to see it from one side of the fence, but then what you just did to me is like, hell no, you better not be doing that to me. Because I know what I'm doing. I'm motivated. Do not be logging my calls and tell me how I'm not doing things because you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, if you flip it, I'm a big opponent of it. if I'm working about, newer employees, trying to onboard them and train them, and that's kind of where we're using it, is like, not the seasoned sales professionals.
Right.
Well,
I mean,
and that
you
needs
also
to
have
be-
to take into effect that having somebody watching over your shoulder, surveilling you, is a stress, right? That's just added stress, which causes you to lose your focus. So I don't think in those situations I agree with Ann. We don't want to add that added stress and make people like incredibly uncomfortable just trying to do their jobs.
Yeah, but this call might be recorded for quality assurance purposes. You hear that all the time. So every customer service person is recorded at call centers. So they already have that as an expectation. So I suspect as
the expectation, I don't necessarily agree that they should be doing that as well. Or maybe, maybe a random sampling kind of thing to help that out. But
let me ask you all
those
this:
kinds of things are added stressors to daily life for people.
How stressful would it be if you learned well after the fact that all of your emails were being scored, and that you have a grade as far as your business communications inside the company, and that affects your progress in career?
I'd fail 100% because I'd be like, put a lot of WTFs. Like, I sent a lot of WTFs, a lot of like, you gotta be kidding me emails. Like, I got a lot of like passive aggressive emails. Like, we're talking like, like if I ever got in, like, Carl, your entire
Carl, it sounds like you can benefit from an AI checking out and maybe helping you get better at your correspondence.
Hey, but this is actually a great example. If you're going to have AI evaluate productivity and value in the workplace, make sure that it's actually effective, right? I mean, the reason Carl still has a job after those emails is because he's super productive, right? I mean, they have him doing everything that involves AI, as far as I can tell.
So I'm going to throw something. Sorry,
so
Brett,
I just want to say that like in trusting AI, right? Like AI said it, and therefore, so we're just looking for you to keep tab on things and say what, give people hints on what's more productive. That's not necessary. Like, you have to measure that shit. Did it work? Was there a cost of the stress of people knowing that they're being listened to? Did it take 10 times longer to write an email because they're all being scored now? Right? Like, or do they all just say, hey, I hope this finds you well? Right? Because now everyone's just going to go, nope, I'm just going to go with what AI wrote.
Wow.
So I've got a slight
It's a good point.
side
It's
to
good
that.
points.
I can actually see a point where the monitoring thing, I would perceive it as a good thing. And I'll give you an example. Back in the dim, dark, distant past, I used to work in sales before I got into IT and marketing. And I always had this, I don't know, this thought at the back of my head, am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? If I had an AI tool that could monitor what I was saying on the phone to a prospective client, and looking at the notes that were going in my CRM and giving me feedback like a coach, rather
Yes.
than monitoring me and saying you've been a naughty boy, but saying, okay, you did this really well, you could do better by trying these things. I think that would be a really powerful tool in using that kind of thing. So, and I don't know how available that kind of stuff is, but I'm sure it will be available.
It's all about how you apply it and how you
Yeah.
teach people how to. I mean, there's a lot of bad agents that if you could use this tool to be a completely jerk boss, or you could use it to be a very helpful. And of course, as an employee, if you're insecure, no matter how it's presented, you're going to take offense and be like, cry yourself to sleep at night like Carl does. So I don't know if
very well. Very well.
So let's continue the thought process. Is there any other? I mean, Andy, you almost flipped me. You almost flipped me with this whole conversation.
Yeah.
Almost, but you're still wrong. So bad AI use cases for business. Is there other things that we shouldn't be using it for that people are just leaping at it and saying this is what I should do?
I think
for me the obvious one is the issues we still have with hallucination. And I'm not saying don't use AI. I'm just saying that we need to be cautious about how we use it so that we don't start putting hallucinations into critical areas that are important. It's one thing to write a blog post in ChatGPT and have a few facts that are not correct, but it's another thing if you're making a critical business decision about it. So I think you need more.
Well, that goes back to AI. The AI exchanges mantra, human in the loop. And if it's done, then you can do that. So Carl, what were you going to say?
Recruitment.
How so?
And the reason why is my wife Andrea was interviewing, because she has her podcast on HR, and she was interviewing an AI, like someone who's been working in ML and AI for close to a decade. And they were talking about what impacted that with HR, and her guest's point is specifically around recruitment. When you start programming how you recruit, you have to understand, though, you're looking at it as if applicants are still doing the exact same thing. However, applicants are using AI to create their applications. So essentially, it's going to become AI with AI. So right now, there's no way to how do you balance that when an AI is trying to game another AI? When an AI, it's not really detecting, but it's like there's two competing forces, and it's not. It may not be as subjective to how essentially the role, what you're looking for the role. It might present you, when we're talking bad, it might present you just efficiently. You won't get the kind of quality candidates that you think you're going to get with AI, because it's AI with AI. So you're like, it could just waste more of your time, because you might just end up, I have to go through these myself, because the people that we're getting aren't necessary, and you won't know until you actually do the interview. Right. So if you're going to trust AI and you're like, okay, well, these are the top 3 candidates. Great. I'm going to interview them because we got AI. But you might have missed a whole bunch just because the AI filtered it in a way, because the other side,
the optimizer. Yep.
Right.
So it could, the employees optimize, or the potential candidates optimize their resumes and anything else. So, yep.
Yeah. So it throws the whole system, the whole process completely off. And when we're talking bad, we're not talking like bias or anything. It's just purely efficiency. You might hire the wrong, or you might interview the wrong people or the wrong candidates, that you'll have to go back and interview again, and it just would lead to more time. And it would
And not to
actually,
mention liability. I mean, you have liability if you
Yeah.
decide to use the AI and be like, and that's where the word bias would be. Although I get cringy when I hear the word bias, but the models are trained a certain way, and if you become liable if you actually respond to what their predominant whatever it is.
Correct.
So TLDR, because we're running late.
Yeah,
for
let's
it.
do the TLDR, everyone. So one thing, let's wrap it up for our audience. What's one thing that piece of advice for our audience how to spot a bad use case or make sure not to use AI in a bad way? Go.
I think for me, it's probably, if you're going to implement it, it's probably about having conversations with people that it will impact. So particularly if it's staff, if you have some concerns about it, talk to your staff about it. You know, just be open and honest about it. Have a communication rather than just implement something and then find you made a mistake later on. I think communication, I guess, is the word.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the lowest hanging, easiest implementation are things that are repetitive, repeated, and fairly low stake for catastrophic failure kind of thing. And so if you look at the flip of that, taking something that's a pain in your butt, but you only do once, not a good use case for AI. And if like it does it wrong, it's a catastrophic problem for your business, also not a good use case for AI. There's a bunch of room between those two things, but.
So I think for me, TLDR is bad use cases is anytime you don't insert yourself into the process at some point to monitor the output.
Right.
But more importantly, are you knowledgeable enough of the topic to be able to discern whether the output is false or hallucinated or inaccurate? So I guess that's my bad use case suggestion is to what do you call it? Gets other opinions before, because I actually asked ChatGPT some things, and then I'll cross-reference it with Google's response to the same question if I'm going to post it. You know, that's my TLDR.
I'll just say that your detector should be sensitive to the inclusion in any communication, whether email or voice, of personal information that it's just improbable that they might have. Or you want to validate that they have a legitimate source of that private information. And that would be your first line of defense.
All right.
I just wanted to go actually further from what take what Robert said a little bit further and think that anything that you should be outputting, in addition to are human, but an actual expert in it, because I think that's where the people who actually are knowledgeable in said area can spot hallucinations, can spot, that sounds right, but that's just a little off, like those kind of things to ensure that, you know, what you're outputting is actually like legit.
Yeah. And I'll only add a little tidbit onto that is verify your sources and implement implement in things that into your process that aren't that affected by having to have different people involved. You don't want to enter into a slippery slope. I guess that's basically what it comes down to, and that's what I got.
All right. And on that note, Junmi is going to pull up the video clip.
Well, we like Robert. So we'll end it there for today. And everybody join us tomorrow for another episode of the Daily AI Show.
Happy Monday, everybody.
Yeah. Happy Monday, everybody.
Show 51. Woo!